Hello, my name is Serendipity, and my capstone essay is about the ideal learning environment for a DAA student. Being able to communicate through images is as challenging, if not more, than writing, and should be regarded with just as much, if not more, academic weight. To successfully convey a message through art, the artist has to make strategic decisions to draw what they know the viewer will understand. This exceeds the boundary of just art and bleeds into psychology and how our brains react to certain shapes and colors. Knowing and not knowing something in an image commands a lot of power due to how humans react to the unknown. A baker has to know what temperature to cook its bread at to make it rise, and a pilot has to know how to fly a plane before transporting passengers. The artist has to know what marks on the paper do before they make art. STEM majors only take required art classes in high school, and they have the option to take more for elective credits in higher education, yet people pursuing the art career continue to take general education classes containing writing and math classes throughout their educational experience. This is showing that the academic society sees creative visual arts not as a part of a well-rounded education. If a STEM major had to take more visual art classes, they would question the reasoning behind it too, because the content of the class is not what they could see fitting into their future industry environment. The mathematic requirement for a DAA student is 2 classes that cover concepts that were taught in high school. Wouldn't writing classes, being another general education category, follow suit and only require 2 classes? As someone who has taken all the English and writing classes needed for a bachelor's, there are no new skills being learned after high school in regards to essays. To gauge how much information is known about a topic, students are asked to write many papers regarding said topic, with reference to multiple sources in a very stiff format. Strictly using the essay to communicate is not the most universal form of an assessment. Providing an alternative assignment that encompasses the same thing as a massive paper would allow for many more people to accomplish the level of communication you are looking for. You also end up with more interesting assignments and opinions to grade, because the students were actually able to show and or tell you their thoughts in their own way. Whereas an essay with black text on white paper is completely deprived of interesting and exciting emotions. In other words, it's boring. Slideshows are a better way of displaying information. There is visual room to interpret what is minimally written on the slide, and visual expression combined with previously taught writing habits is the best way to encompass an opinion, rather than just using one of those. Being bad at test taking boils down to how you interact with nerves in a testing environment. Communication complications tend to show when creative thinkers are limited to a language they are not fluent or comfortable in. This includes preferred language as visual representation. There has been known connections between creative-minded people and being neurodivergent, as well as mental illness. In both situations, being able to communicate comfortably within your own style is very important. Not being able to results in overthinking and overstimulus in a test-taking environment, which I'm sure you can guess negatively impacts their work and grade. Writing classes in college regurgitate and Frankenstein the concepts learned in high school and elementary school. This is not saying that there are no benefits to any writing classes in college, but there is not an immediate skill that is new to gain. If it's for practice to keep your literary brain active, then the amount of writing required should not increase. Art is both a skill and a talent that has to be cultivated and practiced just like any other fine craft. Acting, painting, singing, sculpting, all of these things are things that people had to go out of their way to fully understand in order to manipulate and create according to their imagination. These career paths are not fallback plans that people can just pick up. It is a study and area of specialization that deserves respect and admiration. What goes into making art other than the physical mediums? How do creators decide to visually represent things a certain way? Psychology, the psychology behind creative outlets specifically, is immense. The way something is shaped will give an initial response from the viewer, and they start to make inferences based on the shape language. Making a character look cute and cuddly would be composed of many soft and rounded shapes. This is because our brain registers smooth attributes as approachable or comforting. Triangles and squares act the same way. Pointier characters come across as smarter, evil, sharp, or mischievous, whereas square characters can be perceived as protective, strong, and not as bright and large. The shape language applied to these examples are not specific to just characters. Environments, buildings, and effects all have to take shape language into consideration. Ellen Winner, an artist with a psychology doctorate, specializes in the study of psychological nuances behind art. Through years of both Harvard and Boston College research, she found that art is necessary to our survival. If it were not a necessity, humans would have evolved out of the tendency by now. Our brain picks up on more things that we are aware of at any given time. Designers have to study and be aware of the indirect implications their work has. This is something that is insanely hard and takes an infinite amount of time. No professional artist is done learning about how to wield their art to manipulate emotion. Just like the study of shape within art, the study of color is just as tedious and unending. However, it is more commonly recognized as an integral part of art due to color being more easily noticeable. Without shape in consideration, a color swatch has its own individual power over a composition. Color recognition and association also plays into the perception of hue. A sky blue used in the background of a piece may prompt a more familiar and recognizable horizon. Using this same blue elsewhere in the composition and replacing the sky with a color that is not normally seen in the sky, like red or green, creates an air of fantasy that departs from our real world. It is through self-reflection and research that an artist learns how to use color to demonstrate emotion or personality. Because emotions are as fluid and spectral as a color wheel, there are subsets on subsets of colors that correspond to the subsets and combinations of emotions. This is a lot to process when planning out what you're going to create visually. The order of combining these singular colors into a set of colors also changes what feeling and tone is expressed. For example, using triadic color schemes will allow an artist to use a rounded color palette in relation to the RGB spectrum. Split complementary allows for a warm or cool contrast that leans to either one side or the other. The amount of color that is on a piece also changes how the viewer interprets the meaning of said color. Too much may come across as the color is trying to control or bleed into the other part of the work. There are many things to take into consideration when using colors. This is why more classes for DAA students along the lines of color theory and psychology of art would be so beneficial to understanding what you create. This is a part of a skill and craft of art. Combining the knowledge of color and shape usage, we get closer to understanding the base reasoning for an artist's process. Creating visuals has one of the highest risk rates of being misunderstood because everyone interprets and reads visual imagery in their own ways. That is even more of a reason to study and learn about the in-depth intricacies in your art. From there, it is trial and error until the piece is as you had somewhat imagined it in your head. Unlike careers that provide trophies or other immediate validation for accomplishments, artists rarely are able to bask in the work that they have done because they learned from that piece. The lessons gone through that you can only learn by practice is what makes each visual artist unique and makes the job of doing art unfulfilling and never-ending. The time taken to get the education needed to be a great artist is immense, so every class counts. It is important to make knowledge accessible to student artists because the sheer amount that they have to go through is crazy. With early education establishing the linguistic bones needed for students in a work environment, the need for higher-level writing and English classes is non-existent. Even if you are in the field of study to pursue writing as a career, there is not new beneficial lessons being taught. The upper-level classes just ask you to redo what you did in high school. Digital arts and animation majors are supposed to learn and understand all of the previously stated topics while actively practicing them in course-specific required classes. It is a lot of academic ground to cover and a huge mental load for students. Continuing to include general education classes in higher education establishments takes away from the time that they could be specializing in their craft and doesn't provide any new skill sets to be learned. You are there to be educated in your major, not to repeatedly write papers in the same format. The time and effort put into making something universally understandable is why art is a craft that has to be learned. In a way, artists have to speak all languages at once, while none at the same time. Thank you for listening.